Hey everyone, Andy here. In this video, I'm going to try and make Necrons cool again. I was listening back to that intro and thought that sounded pretty robotic, but we won't record that because that is on topic. Anyway, in this video, I want to convert a Necron Lord basically. I love the idea of Necrons. When I was a kid, I was super obsessed with anything Egyptian because it scared the stuff out of me, and I really like the idea of scary Egypt robots in space. When they first came out, second edition, they weren't really cool, but then in the kind of mid-Hammer era, I think they were pretty awesome, especially when they had really tattered robes and things around them. So I really like this Necron Lord. It's just looking super old now. So my idea is to try and recreate something like this. The artworks are super cool, all the classic ones, and actually the new artworks as well. They're really cool, especially when you see the sort of scale of them on the home worlds, and they have all these huge, obelisks, and I just think the idea of them is really, really cool. But the reality is models like this. I mean, there's better Necron Lord models, but this one is just super goofy in my opinion. It's really small things, but the left arm, how it's dead straight and the face isn't even looking at the Resorb, I don't know, it just seems kind of silly for me. But anyway, I've been thinking about doing Necrons for a while now. I was actually looking at the Void Dragon, and I did start converting that a long time ago with a full repose and stuff like that, but I got really stuck on how to base it and suspend it basically, so that fell by the wayside. The other idea I had was to do something with the Silent King. Just like Glutos, I think there's so many models that are these huge kits, and in there is just a really fantastic single mini. I really liked the Silent King potential, but there were a few things I really wasn't into. One, the metal cloak. I kind of get why they did it, but all these new cloaks they're adding with the scale bits and the metal, I guess they're making it, I don't know, maybe easier to paint with washes or something like that. But I prefer the old aesthetic with the really tattered robes. Also, that jazz hand is just, well, it's not for me. I won't be mean. But just a few things not quite right, but it is a really cool kit. He's really tall, which appeals to me. A nice big Necron, almost 54mm scale really. I think he's 60mm tall, so it feels like a different scale, and that appeals to me quite a lot. If you watch my Eldar videos, you'll know I'm kind of into Dawn of War, and that inspires me quite a lot. Actually, after I finished with Eldar, I played some of the Necrons, and I really like the Necron Lord in that, especially how it's got the kind of slit down the centre of the face. I don't know what you call those types of masks, but that is a big improvement to me over the goofy smile. So with that in mind, I had all these ideas for the Silent King, and I ordered him a little while ago, and while I was doing Glutos in a bit of downtime, I did start playing with the idea of using the Silent King. But when I came back from Chicago, I was thinking, what shall I go into next? And I'm kind of waiting for the new Slan to arrive, but a Necron Lord felt really appealing to me to do something 40k after doing Lord of the Rings and Age of Sigmar. So with all the inspiration in mind, this picture is my absolute favourite Necron art that I can find. I just love the mood of it, and I really want to paint something like this. Try and make a Necron feel a little more evil, a little more moody. Let's just see what I can do with it. So let's dive on into the conversion and see what I can make. First thing I need to do is make that line down the centre of the face, and luckily you've got a nose as a sort of guide, so I carefully scored coming from the nose down here. And I want to try and match the width of the nose. I think that looks about the right width, so I just start scoring lines and scraping it out. I'm not an amazing modeler, so you should be able to do all the conversion work in this video, as I'm just not great at sculpting. But anyway, I just removed this, and it was a little messy, but I knew I could re-sculpt it back in anyway. So with that removed, you can see it already looks cooler without that cheesy, goofy smile. And I just start filling it in with some milliput. I'm using my sculpting tool here to try and score a line, but I did find later on that using a piece of 0.5mm wire was the best thing to get the perfect kind of slit between these two. Because I'm not a good sculptor, I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding, so the sculpting work might not be perfect when I do the actual sculpting, but I'll tweak it just with sanding, and then I might have to have another go at the sculpt. And that's, I think, the difference. If you're a great sculptor, you can probably nail it first go and it's done. But for me, and perhaps yourself, you just need a little more patience and more time, and I just needed a few more attempts and lots of sanding. The next job was to reposition the arms and legs, and I had to reposition the left arm because of the goofy jazz hand, and also the right leg because his legs are so straight. It's just, I get it because it's stood up on the barge or whatever, but the straight legs just make it seem kind of boring to me. So I very carefully score and cut the arms at both the shoulder joint and the elbow joint, and then you get left with these teeny little limbs, so you've got to be pretty careful and neat and tidy here. I just make sure I clean up the ends really carefully with a knife. I then very carefully drill through the limbs. I'm trying to use a 0.8mm needle and then a 0.5mm brass rod. So that gives me a little bit of leeway, but it's a very fine rod, so I can use these small limbs and still have them pinned. If you're using 1mm brass wire, then in these thin arms, you're not going to have much leeway. I use a hand drill, but I also have this wow stick, which is fantastic. I do really recommend buying one of these. They're absolutely fantastic. With the pins in place, it's quite hard. Maybe you need some blue tack, but I sort of practice and try and work out the position I want. And it's pretty cool, and already having that hand up high, even though I'm not changing the fingers at all, I think is a big improvement over just having it hanging down. So I was really pleased at this point, just seeing the potential in this figure. I did the same treatment for the legs, and this was a bit harder to remove that kind of support part, but yeah, I was really happy I changed these legs. I thought it was going to be a real pain, but I only had to do one, so it wasn't too bad really. And I did use thicker pins for this, 1mm, because, well, they were larger and I could. Once you've played around with it and practiced a few times dry, then I do glue these in place. I use quite a small amount of glue in case I'm not happy with the position, just almost tacking them in place. And they can break off, but just a small amount I think's better in case you're really unhappy with how you build it. I then started to play with the base, and I had this Helbrecht base lying around. You can see I actually wanted to paint Helbrecht and it's undercoated, and I thought this would be fantastic for this mini, as I wanted it just kind of in the desert, and I thought these rocks would be great for it. The most important thing is I have the correct height and position for the feet, so I just use some milliput, put some blobs down, and just stick the model in, and then I can kind of work on the base separately. As long as there's definitive place for the feet to stick, then I can work on the project separately. But you can see I'm just using my sculpting tool to do some rough shapes and try and match those rocks. And again, I don't have to nail these first time. Milliput is so good because it dries rock hard, and I can cut it with a knife to get more angular rock shapes and sand it and stuff like that. But yeah, try and do a rough sculpting shape, and then I think it's easier to tweak it with a knife after, especially if you want really sharp angular things like rock. I actually did all this work a while ago, and I didn't take proper photos with my camera, so I've just got these mobile phone whips really that I was kind of sending to people as I was working on it. But yeah, I got to this point, and then I knew I wanted some other parts, and I was thinking, will Abaddon's cloak work? It's really tatty and it's got a good flow to it, so I was hoping it would work, and luckily my friend had a spare one, so I was waiting for that to come in the post. And then I just grabbed it and put it against the model. I didn't start any sculpting or anything like that, but just putting it against the model as a proof of concept, again, I thought, yes, that will work. And I really like how the cloak frames the miniature because it looks very spindly, without it. But yeah, this was right. And then I was really excited for the project. This is where I put it down for a few weeks because I needed to finish my Adepticon piece, but I knew I had something to look forward to when I got back. I cut away a lot of the cloak, as you can see, and I put some 0.5mm pins in as best I could, and the very fine attachment points. This fixed the cloak in place and made it secure, and also gave me something to at least start working the putty on. You can see I really roughly just add a big old blob of milliput, and again, because I'm not a good sculptor, I'm just going to have to add a little bit of milliput at a time. I can't nail it first go. But I just wanted a sort of chunk to work from and glue to the wire, and then I could gradually add more milliput to bulk out this space. Maybe some more pins would have helped. This is probably not the best way of doing it, but I did manage to get it right in the end, so, that's how it goes. After each ugly step of adding milliput, I used a brand new knife blade, and I actually managed to carve a pretty awesome shape that matched the plastic cloak, and then I just finished by sanding it off, but I kind of just roughly cut these horrible bits of milliput and then just kept adding more and more. It took quite a few repeats of doing this, but eventually I did get a really great result. I then sanded it with some wet and dry paper, and this took quite a long time, but with all the work I'd done, sort of cutting, adding a bit more, it was pretty great, and getting it to this stage and just sanding it to clean it up was, again, I think for me and my sculpting skills, the best way to work. So not the perfect way to get there, but I did get the result I needed. The bottom of the staff has a part that glues into the metal cloak, so it wasn't a complete blade, and based on my sculpting skills I thought I couldn't achieve this. So I started by cutting out the blades, but in the end I replaced the bottom with one of the sort of other parts of the Silent King's staff, and that worked out absolutely fine. The top as well is replaced with Xerus, I think he's called, and just that slightly slimmer blade I think represents the original model I want to copy a bit better, and it's just not a big, huge blade. I originally didn't plan on doing a resurrection orb because I think they can look a bit stupid, those massive spheres. I think they're a little bit big on all of the models. But then I kind of had this idea, can I do a floating one that's kind of hovering with energy and lightning? There's a Catan in the Silent King box, and it has these spheres that have that lightning that go into him, and I was just looking at the sprue for some parts and thought, that can be the resurrection orb. So I just cut one of these out and blue tacked it to the hand, and I really like this idea. Just a little bit of a hover I think is pretty cool. So I whittled down the lightning bit of plastic as thin as I thought I could get away with to glue that to the hand. And there's little grooves in the hand, so a bit of super glue and putty, and I think it's pretty secure in there. But I really like this look. I debated adding some lightning coming off it, but I thought this is going to be too difficult to pull off. And I think I can be forgiven for having a way to suspend it. It's not going to actually float. You're going to be able to see a little bit of plastic come down to the hand, but I think that's okay, because I think having that illusion when you take a photo from certain angles is going to be worth it. And I looked at some of the arts again as well, and I really like how the res orb looks. I think the key is just a little bit smaller, and it helps that the Silent King's hand is really big and open like this. I thought I was done, but I had a few little mishaps. I had to resculpt the neck and add an extra segment. For this I used a mix of green stuff and milliput, and I didn't film this because I'm really bad at sculpting, to be honest, and I struggled just to make this work, and I was a little bit stressed at this point, thinking I can't pull off this conversion. And I felt like that a lot actually when I was doing the cloak, but with some perseverance and a lot of sanding, and then adding milliput again when it was wrong, sanding again, I did manage to get something I'm really happy with. So this is the final look, and I have to say, personally, I'm really, really happy. I think it feels more imposing, more brutal, and just actually maybe a little bit of a scary Necron, not a goofy Skeletor. I don't know, that's how I feel. Let me know if you think it's cooler in the comments. But yeah, I'm really happy I pulled this off. I really struggled to get the cloak right, but yeah, with some perseverance and some patience and sanding, I did manage to get it to work, I think. So I'm really happy. I really like the way he's looking at the Resorb, and I think that change in the face, getting rid of the goofy smile, is, a really important one personally. And yeah, I love the way his leg is kind of striding up on the rock, on that tactical rock. But I think that makes a real difference as well, as opposed to the straight legs of the original Silent King. So yeah, super excited. I do want to add a dead body to the base, a Necron one, but I'm waiting for one to come in the post. But I like the idea of having the Resorb glowing, and then maybe that little body kind of starting to move and glowing on the base as well, as he's starting to resurrect the Necrons around him. I think that's super fun and thematic, and it tells a bit more of a story in just a single miniature. I'm really excited to paint this model now. I've got a few more bits to do, like change the base. I've got a bit more sanding to do as well, and I'm going to give it a wash because it's got very, very dusty from all the sanding. So a good clean with just washing up liquid and water to get it, nice and clean and dust free. And then I will get priming. I'm going to paint the armor black, I'm pretty sure, and I think that's what the next video will be. I'm going to try and paint the best black I can and make it really atmospheric. I think I want to make him really dark and just have little bits of glow. Not crazy OSL, try and keep it nice and subtle, but it should be a really fun painting project. I want to get it done in 3 weeks, which is reasonably tight, but it's a relatively simple model, especially compared to Glutos, who I also managed to do in 3 weeks. So we'll see how we go, and I will enter it into Golden Demon, but 40k single is a super hard category, so I'll just do the best I can. But I'm really happy with this model, and I hope you like it too. And it's nice to do a conversion video in detail. But yeah, this took me a whole week to finish off, so I'm looking forward to painting. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you think this is a cool looking Necron Lord, and I can't wait to get paint on it. See you next time.